The plane had 267 people on board. Nobody noticed seat 12C. Nobody noticed the quiet girl with the old sneakers and the book she wasn't reading. Then both engines stopped. The plane started falling. And the girl nobody noticed stood up and said 7 words nobody expected. "I'm an ace pilot. I've done this before." Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. It was Thursday, June 6, 2024. The time was 3:47 in the afternoon. The airport in Brazil was very loud. It was very crowded. Many flights were late because of storms that morning. People were running. People were shouting. Kids were crying. It was total chaos everywhere. Gate 22. LATAM Airlines. Flight 8052. Going to Miami. The plane was a Boeing 787. Boarding started at 3:52 p.m. 267 people were on this flight. Some were business people. Some were tourists. Some were families. Some were students. There was an old couple going to celebrate their wedding anniversary. There was a football player going for training. There was a food blogger. Just normal people. Going on with their normal lives. Among all these people, one girl was invisible. Nobody saw her. She looked to be in her early 20s. She had a Korean face. She was small, maybe 5 feet 4 inches. She wore a big gray cardigan. It was too big for her. The sleeves went past her fingers. She wore old jeans and old white sneakers. Her long black hair fell over her face like a curtain. You could not see her eyes. She carried almost nothing. A small cloth bag. An old paperback book in Portuguese. No phone. No laptop. She walked with her head down. Her shoulders were bent. Like someone who had spent her whole life trying to not be seen. When she bumped into someone, she whispered sorry in Portuguese, desculpe, so quietly that nobody heard her. Her seat was 12C. The middle seat in economy. The worst seat on any plane. She sat down fast. She pulled out the book. She held it up in front of her face. Like a wall. The businessman in 12B looked at her for 1 second. Then he went back to his laptop. The teenage boy in 12A was already sleeping with headphones on. Nobody cared about the girl in seat 12C. I was in seat 18F. 3 rows back. Across the aisle. I only noticed her once. She dropped her book during boarding. She picked it up quietly. That was it. The plane door closed at 4:15 p.m. The engine started. The flight attendants walked up and down. The safety video played. At 4:32 p.m., the plane took off. It flew north into the blue sky. Everything was fine. About 40 minutes into the flight, I got up to use the bathroom. I walked past seat 12C. I looked at the girl. She was not reading anymore. She was holding the book. But her eyes were staring at nothing. Empty eyes. Like she was thinking about something far away. And her hands, she was gripping the book so tight that her knuckles were white. I thought, she is scared of flying. Poor girl. Then I went to the bathroom. I forgot about her completely. I had no idea what I was really looking at. Her name was Una Park. Lieutenant Una Park. But that title was in zero public records anywhere in the world. She was 23 years old. She was a soldier in the South Korean Air Force. And she officially did not exist. South Korea's FA-50 fighter jet program had no female pilots. Officially. South Korea did no secret spy missions near North Korea. Officially. There was no secret training program between Korean and American pilots in California. Officially. The truth was very different. Una joined the Air Force at age 18. Her test scores were so high that the officers ran the test again. They thought there was a mistake. There was no mistake. She was picked for a secret unit. Most Air Force generals did not even know this unit existed. This unit flew spy missions near North Korea. They flew F-50 fighter jets. They flew very low. Very fast. And nobody knew they were there. Una had flown 2,100 hours. She had done 147 missions. 12 of those missions went deep into North Korean airspace. In secret. Which was actually against international law. But nobody would ever say it happened. Her call sign was Phantom. She got that name because of how she flew. She flew her jet so close to the ground that radar could not see her. She flew through valleys. Over rivers. Behind mountains. She would appear on radar for 1 second, then disappear. Like a ghost. Phantom. She had survived 2 emergencies that should have killed her. The first happened over the Sea of Japan. It was a gray November morning. She was coming back from a spy mission. She was flying at only 800 feet above the water. Low enough to hide from radar. Then her engine stopped. No warning. No sound before. Just silence. A pilot flying 800 feet above the ocean at 420 miles per hour has about 4 seconds to react. After 4 seconds, the ocean decides everything. She could not eject. Her jet carried a secret machine under its belly. This machine had very important technology. The rules said this machine must come back to base or be destroyed carefully. It could not be left in the ocean where enemy ships could find the pieces. If she ejected, the machine would be lost. If the machine was lost, it would become a big international problem. So she could not eject. She had 40 miles of ocean between her and land. She had 800 feet of height. A dead engine. And a secret machine she could not drop. But she also had luck. A South Korean Navy ship was only 17 miles away. A small carrier ship was with that Navy ship. This carrier was built for helicopters, not fighter jets. Una called them on the emergency radio. The carrier's officer told her what she already knew. Her jet was not made for carrier landings. The deck was too short. The landing wires were for helicopters, not fast fighter jets. She told him she understood. She told him she was coming anyway. The approach took 4 minutes. 4 minutes of pure skill and instinct. She managed her speed, her height, her angle carefully. She talked to herself out loud. Her teachers had told her that talking out loud keeps your brain focused in an emergency. The carrier deck was moving in the waves. A strong wind kept pushing her sideways. She corrected again and again. The deck rushed up toward her. She touched down 30 feet past the start line. She bounced once. She caught the third landing wire on the bounce. The jet stopped. The front wheel was 6 feet from the edge of the deck. The ocean was directly below. The carrier crew ran toward her jet with fire extinguishers. They found her sitting in the cockpit. Both hands still on the controls. Her mask was foggy from breathing too hard. She could not make herself let go. She sat there for 3 full minutes before her hands would open. The second emergency happened 9 months later, during a training flight. Her jet lost all hydraulic power. This is the system that moves the wings and tail. Nothing worked. The rulebook said, eject right now. But if she ejected, the jet would crash into a village below with no one controlling it. She could not do that. 2 years before, she had read a technical paper about an idea. You can control a jet using only engine power, no wing or tail movements at all. You change how much power goes to each engine, and this makes the jet turn or climb or descend. The paper said this idea had never been tested in a real jet. It called it theoretically possible. Una proved it was actually possible. She flew 43 miles using only her throttle. She came down through clouds. She found a dry lake bed, flat and long enough. She landed with 400 meters to spare. She walked away without a scratch. Her commanding officer read the report 3 times. Then he called Edwards Air Force Base in California. He arranged a 6-month training program that officially did not exist. That program was where Una learned to land dead aircraft. No engine. No power. Just gliding. She learned how to calculate a glide path in her head. How to read wind and ground like other pilots read instruments. She did 43 successful unpowered landings, in jets, in big planes, in many different aircraft. She learned to do all the math in her head. Height, distance, glide angle, wind, descent speed, runway length, all at the same time. The American pilots called her, the Korean girl who can land anything, anywhere. Her name was in 0 official records. But none of this was what was in her head as she sat in seat 12C, gripping her book. 3 days ago, Una had flown her last secret mission. A solo spy run deep into North Korean territory. Farther north than she had ever gone before. The information they needed was very important. She went in. And they found her. North Korean radar picked up her jet. 4 MiG-29 fighter jets came after her. She heard the warning beep in her headset, radar lock. Every nerve in her body fired at once. For the next 17 minutes, she flew the most desperate flight of her life. She went lower. She went faster. She flew through narrow valleys that the enemy pilots thought were impossible to fly through. She flew so low over the ocean that her jet's wings made ripples on the water. After 17 minutes, the warning beep went silent. She had lost them. She flew back across the border at 600 miles per hour. She landed at base. She shut down her engine. Her hands would not stop shaking. Her commanding officer looked at her eyes. He gave her emergency leave. He did not ask a single question. She had not told anyone why she was really on this flight. She had not told anyone about the shaking hands. Or the nightmares. Or the way she kept seeing those radar warning lights when she closed her eyes. Her cousin in Miami thought Una was just a quiet student coming for a vacation. What Una was really doing was running away from herself for 1 week. That was her plan. The universe had other plans. 5:47 p.m. 1 hour and 15 minutes after takeoff. The plane was flying at 42,000 feet. The Caribbean Sea was below. 1,000 shades of blue and green. Beautiful from 7 miles up. Every light on the instrument panel was green. Everything was normal. In the cockpit, Captain Ricardo Santos was thinking about his granddaughter's birthday party next week. He was 52 years old. 29 years of flying. 27,000 hours in his logbook. He had flown through storms, ash clouds, hydraulic problems, electrical failures, bird strikes. He had seen almost everything. Except what was about to happen. First Officer Maria Reyes was reading arrival information from Miami on her tablet. 38 years old. 8,400 hours of flying. Focused and professional. Barranquilla Control, LATAM 8052, flying at 42,000 feet, Santos said on the radio. LATAM 8052, Barranquilla Control, understood. Normal. Routine. Boring. The best kind of flying. Then. Bang. A huge sound. From the left side of the plane. Like something enormous had broken. Reyes looked at the instruments. Left engine failure. Santos reached for the emergency checklist. Normal steps. His hands moved fast from years of training. He had barely started when. Bang! The right side now. Both engine panels went dead. The thrust dropped to zero. The deep quiet vibration that tells you the engines are running, gone. The plane went silent in a way that no plane should ever be silent. Dual engine failure. Reyes said loudly but clearly. That is impossible unless. We need to try to restart. Now. They ran the restart steps. Both of them. At the same time. Every switch. Every step. The way people do when they have trained for something their whole career. Nothing happened. The engines did not start. The instruments stayed dead. Both engines were gone. The Boeing 787, one of the most advanced planes ever built, was now a glider. Santos did the math fast. Glide ratio with no engines, about 15 to 1. For every 1 mile of height, the plane glides 15 miles forward. Current height, 42,000 feet. Almost 8 miles up. Maximum glide distance, about 120 miles. Nearest airport, Cartagena, Colombia. 340 miles away. They could not reach Cartagena. Not even close. Descent speed without engines, about 2,000 feet per minute. Time until they hit the sea, about 21 minutes. We have to land in the water, Santos said. Very quietly. Reyes looked at him. At this weight and speed. Nobody survives. I know. A 787 hitting ocean water at 200 miles per hour is like hitting a wall. Water does not move. Everyone on board would die. Santos picked up the radio. Barranquilla Control, LATAM 8052. Mayday. 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 Both engines have failed. We are at 41,500 feet and going down. Please help. Barranquilla Control answered immediately. They were shocked. But there was nothing they could do. They could only watch on radar as the plane went down. In the cabin, 267 people heard the engine stop. You do not need to know anything about planes to recognize that sound. Everyone knows it. The engine sound changes. The vibration stops. The plane goes from feeling alive to feeling like dead weight. And the silence that comes after is the loudest thing you have ever heard. For 1 second, the whole cabin was completely still. Then the screaming started. It moved through the plane like a wave. Starting at the front. Rolling to the back. People grabbed the seats in front of them. A mother pulled her 8-year-old daughter so hard the girl cried out. An old man pressed his forehead against the window and prayed quietly. A group of students who had been laughing 30 seconds ago went pale and silent. I was in seat 18F. I knew. We all knew. The engines were off. We were too far from any airport. I held my armrests and thought very clearly, this is how I die. On a Thursday afternoon above the Caribbean Sea. In seat 12C, Una Park did not scream. She did not grab anything. She did not cry. She did not panic. She went very, very still. And inside that stillness, her brain started working. Both engines failed. No thrust. The plane is now a glider. She could feel the change in her seat. The nose was dropping slightly. The plane was going down. Glide ratio. What is the glide ratio of a 787? She knew. She had studied every plane. Every emergency. Her teachers at Edwards Air Force Base always said, knowledge is survival. A 787 with no engines glides at about 15 to 1. Gear up. Flaps at 0. Height, 42,000 feet. About 8 miles up. Maximum glide, about 120 miles. Geography. She closed her eyes. She had memorized Caribbean maps for her spy work. Colombia to the south. Cuba to the north. Haiti to the northeast. Jamaica to the northwest. And San Andres Island. A small Colombian island. Almost exactly to the northeast. A small holiday island with one runway. She opened her eyes. She did the calculation again. Distance to San Andres, about 180 miles. Too far for a straight glide. But not impossible if they managed everything correctly. If they flew at the right speed. If the wind helped. Barely possible. But possible. If someone in that cockpit knew what they were doing. Yuna looked at her hands. They were shaking. They had been shaking since she got on this plane. 3 days after the worst flight of her life, her body still remembered fear. She thought about her cousin in Miami waiting for her. She thought about the little girl 3 rows ahead crying into her mother's shoulder. She thought about 267 people about to hit the ocean. She thought about 43 unpowered landings. She put her book in the seat pocket. She unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up. And she walked forward. The cabin was pure chaos. People were out of their seats. Flight attendants were trying to calm everyone down. Yuna walked through all of it like it was nothing. Something had changed in her. The bent shoulders were gone. Her head was up. Her back was straight. She walked like someone who had made a decision and was not going back. A flight attendant blocked her path. His name tag said Paulo. 12 years with this airline. He held up his hand. Miss, go back to your seat. I need to talk to the pilots. Yuna's voice was completely calm. I am a military pilot. I can help them land this plane. Paulo stared at her. The big gray cardigan. The old jeans. The old sneakers. You are a military pilot. Yes. Please move. We have no time. Something in her voice made him step aside. He said later it was not anger or fear that moved him. It was certainty. She sounded like someone who knew exactly what was happening and what came next. Yuna reached the front of the plane. The head flight attendant, Juliana, 48 years old, 26 years with this airline, grandmother of 2, stood directly in front of the cockpit door. Arms crossed. Nobody goes through that door, Juliana said firmly. I know. I am asking you to make an exception. Yuna looked at her directly. My name is Yuna Park. I am a military pilot. I have special training in landing planes with no engine power. The pilots up there are facing a problem I was trained to solve. If you let me in, I may be able to save this plane. If you do not let me in, everyone here will die in about 18 minutes. Juliana looked at her for a long moment. Then she picked up the phone and called the cockpit. Captain Santos heard Juliana's words while still running emergency steps. A young woman. Says she is a military pilot. Says she can help. He almost said no. In any other situation he would have said no. You never let passengers into the cockpit. But in any other situation, he was not going to die in 20 minutes. Let her in, he said. The door opened. Yuna stepped in and closed the door. She had never been in a 787 cockpit before. She took 2 seconds to look at all the instruments, descent rate, speed, height, heading, engine status, battery power. Then she looked at Santos. Santos had white hair and deep lines around his eyes from 29 years of flying. He was looking at this small young woman in a cardigan with an expression she knew. She had seen it on the faces of officers the first time they heard what she could do. Complete disbelief. Yuna spoke in Portuguese. She spoke 6 languages because spy work needs it. Her Portuguese was excellent. Captain, my name is Yuna Park. I am a military pilot in the South Korean Air Force. I trained at Edwards Air Force Base in America in landing planes with no engine power. I have done 43 successful unpowered landings in different planes. I believe I can help you land this plane safely at San Andres Island, Colombia. But you need to trust me right now. Because we have about 17 minutes. Santos looked at Reyes. Reyes looked at Santos. San Andres is 180 miles away, Santos said. We cannot glide that far. We can. If we manage our energy correctly and use the wind. Tell me your descent rate, airspeed, and wind direction. How does a Korean military pilot end up as a passenger on our flight? I am on leave. Going to visit family. Yuna did not look away. Captain, I know this sounds impossible. A 23-year-old girl in a cardigan says she can land your plane. I know how that sounds. But please think about this, you have no other options. I do have this training. And right now, time is the only thing we cannot waste. Please. What do your instruments say? A long moment passed. Santos looked at his instruments. Height 40,600 feet. Descent rate 2,000 feet per minute. Speed 275 knots. Heading 005. Yuna reached into her bag. She pulled out the paperback book. She tore out the last blank page, the only blank page. She looked at Reyes. Pen. Reyes handed her a pen. Yuna put the paper on her knee. She started writing. Numbers. Simple drawings. A sketch of the glide path with distances and angles. First thing, she said while writing. Change direction. Turn to bearing 045. That goes directly to San Andres. Every degree off course wastes height we cannot afford. Turn to 045, Santos told Reyes. Reyes adjusted the direction. The plane banked gently. Without engine power, everything felt slow and fragile. Good. Second thing, slow down to best glide speed. For a 787 with no engines, that is about 240 knots. Going slower means we fall less fast and glide farther. Reducing to 240, Reyes said. The descent rate dropped a little. 1,950 feet per minute. 1,900, 1,870. Third, what is the wind direction up here? Reyes checked. Coming from the east. About 30 knots. Yuna looked at her numbers and allowed herself one quiet breath. That is a tailwind for our direction. It helps us. It adds about 15 more miles to our glide. She finished writing. If we hold 240 knots, keep heading 045, and use this tailwind, we should reach San Andres with about 7,900 feet of height left. That is enough to circle and land. Santos turned to look at her. You did all that in your head. On paper. This is what I was trained for. You have landed a 787 before. No. But I have landed jets and cargo planes with no engines. The rules are the same. Physics does not change because the plane is bigger. A 787 weighs 227,000 kilograms. I know. The landing speed will be higher. The stopping distance will be longer. The margin for error will be smaller. I have put all that in my calculations. She looked at him steadily. Captain, I need you to trust me. Not based on hope. Based on physics, math, and real training. The numbers work. I have checked them twice. Can you trust me? Santos looked at this young woman with the fighter pilot eyes. What do you need? He said. Juliana made the announcement. She used the exact words Yuna had written for her. The voice came through the speakers, young, calm, with a slight accent, speaking first in Portuguese then in English. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Una Park. I am a military pilot and I am in the cockpit helping the flight crew. Both engines have failed. We are gliding and will land at San Andres Island in Colombia. Time to landing, 16 minutes. I know this is scary. But I have done this before. The math supports our plan. Please fasten your seatbelts, follow the crew instructions, and stay calm. We are going to land safely. 16 minutes. In seat 15B, Ana Silva was holding her 8-year-old daughter Isabel very tightly. Ana was crying. Not from fear this time. From something small and fragile and impossible that the voice had just given her. Hope. A military pilot. She has done this before. 16 minutes. In seat 18F, I heard the announcement. I felt something change inside me. The quiet girl with the book. The one I walked past on the way to the bathroom. The one I thought was just scared of flying. She was in the cockpit. She was trying to land us. I looked at the empty seat 12C. And I prayed with everything I had. Not for a miracle. I prayed for a 23-year-old woman I had never spoken to. Doing something impossible. To succeed. Height 35,000 feet, Reyes called. Distance to San Andres, 148 miles. Una checked her paper. On track. Hold speed and direction. Santos was quiet for a moment. Then, how do you stay so calm? I am not calm, Una said without looking up. I am terrified. My hands were shaking before the engines even failed. But panic does not help anyone. Panic kills. So I put it away and I work the problem. Even now. Especially now. She made a small note on her paper. 30,000 feet. Distance. 110 miles. Good. We are slightly ahead of where we need to be. The tailwind is helping more than I calculated. Santos let out a slow breath. What are our chances? Una was quiet for a moment. If I make no mistakes in the calculations, and the plane handles the way I predicted, and the runway is clean, and we hit our numbers. She paused. Good. But I do not want to give you an exact number. I do not want you to get overconfident. That is not an answer. No. She looked at him. 70%. Maybe 75. Those are good odds for an impossible situation. Santos nodded slowly. And the other 25%? We come in too fast. Or too hard. Or we fall short. Or something I did not predict happens. But 25% chance of failure is still 75% chance of life. And 0% of us survive hitting the ocean at 200 knots. She turned back to her paper. 20,000 feet. Distance. 75 miles. The cockpit went quiet. No more talking. Just the steady work of flying a dead plane toward a runway still far away. 10,000 feet, Reyes called. 35 miles. Una looked up from her paper and through the front window. There. A small shape of green and gray in the blue water. Very small. But there, San Andres Island. And a thin gray line cutting across it. The runway. I can see it, Una said. I can see the runway. Santos and Reyes both looked. Santos exhaled. How do we circle with no power? Santos asked. We only get one chance. We arrive high and to the west of the runway. We have a little extra height right now, 8,000 feet when I calculated we would need 7,900. We will use that extra height to spiral down over the island. Then we turn east and land heading west. One smooth turn. We buy position with height. You have done this before. Over a test range in Nevada. In an F-16. Different plane, same physics. Santos nodded. Tell me every step. 8,000 feet. We are over the island, Reyes said. Below them, Yuna could see San Andres clearly now. A small long island. White beaches. Blue-green water. Hotel buildings along the coast. And the runway, 7,218 feet of concrete stretching almost the full length of the island. Not a big runway for a 787. But enough. If everything went right. Start a left turn. Bank 30 degrees. We are going to spiral down and end up east of the runway for the final approach. Santos banked left. The island turned below them. Yuna watched their position against the runway carefully. 5,000 feet. Passing the north side. Keep turning. Stop when we point east, heading 090. The plane continued its slow spiral. Banking. Descending. Turning. Spending height carefully. Like money they could not afford to waste. Rolling out. Heading 090. 3,500 feet. 4 miles east of the runway. Perfect. Something settled inside Yuna. That feeling when all the numbers line up. When she can see the landing in her mind before it happens. Landing gear down. Use the emergency gravity lever. No hydraulics. Emergency lever. Free fall. Pull it. Santos found the lever and pulled. The landing gear swung down on gravity alone. It locked with a heavy clunk. 3 green lights appeared. Gear down and locked, Reyes confirmed. Good. Flaps to 15 degrees. The flaps came out. The plane slowed a little. The nose lifted slightly. 2,000 feet. 3 miles from the runway. Yuna looked straight ahead. The runway was right there. She could see the start line. The touchdown markers. The approach lights. Hold exactly 160 knots, she said. Do not change it. 160 knots. 1,500 feet. 2 miles. This was it now. No more adjusting. Either they were on track or they were not. The math was done. Now it was just flying. They were on track. Exactly where they needed to be. Flaps to 30. Full landing configuration. Flaps 30. The plane slowed to 145 knots. The descent angle increased a little. They were dropping toward the runway at exactly the right rate. Not too steep. Not too shallow. The energy was perfect. 1,000 feet. 1 mile. Speed 142 knots. Good. Hold this speed. Hold this angle. Do not touch either one. The runway filled the front window now. A wide concrete strip rushing toward them. Yuna could see the numbers painted at the start. She could see the trees on both sides. She could see the airport buildings on the right. 500 feet. Yuna's hands were completely still. Her eyes did not leave the runway. 200 feet. 100 feet. Flare now. Pull back gently. Very gently. Let the main wheels touch first. Do not force it. Let the plane land itself. Santos pulled back with the gentleness of 29 years of practice. The nose came up. The descent slowed. The runway stopped rushing. 50 feet. 30 feet. 20 feet. The main landing wheels touched the runway. 2 solid contacts with the concrete. Not a bounce. Not a crash. A firm, controlled touchdown. Nose wheel down, Yuna said immediately. Maximum braking. No engine reverse. Everything on the brakes. Santos pressed the brakes with full strength. No engine help, just brake pads gripping rotors. 227,000 kilograms of plane trying to slow down on concrete. The runway flew past. 1,000 feet used. 2,000, 3,000. Speed was dropping. But slowly. So slowly. 4,000 feet. Still above 80 knots. 5,000 feet. 65 knots. 6,000 feet. 45 knots. The smell of burning brakes filled the cockpit. The plane shook. 6,500 feet. 25 knots. 6,800 feet. Walking pace. 7,000 feet. The plane stopped. 7,000 feet down the 7,218-foot runway. 218 feet of concrete left. Silence. Nobody in the cockpit spoke. Santos's hands were still gripping the controls. Then Reyes made a sound. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a cry. Something in between. "We are down," Santos whispered. "We are actually down." In the cabin, 267 people were alive. The sound from the cabin reached Yuna even through the closed cockpit door. A huge wave of noise. Cheering. Crying. Screaming. Laughing. The sound of 267 people who thought they were going to die finding out they were not. In the cockpit, Yuna sat down on the jump seat and put her face in her hands. Now her hands were really shaking. Badly. The energy that had kept her together for 20 minutes was leaving her body all at once. She felt empty. Very small. Santos knelt in front of her. He was 29 years older than her. He had seen more emergencies than most people could imagine. And he was looking at this young woman in her oversized gray cardigan with an expression she had never seen from anyone before. Something close to awe. "You saved 267 lives," he said. Yuna could not speak for a moment. She was crying quietly. Just steady tears, like a tap she could not turn off. "Who are you really?" Santos asked. Not demanding. Genuinely asking. "Just a pilot," Yuna said. "Someone who knew what to do. That is all. No one just knows how to do that. You calculated that approach in your head while people were screaming. You talked us through a landing on a runway you had never seen, in a plane you had never flown." He shook his head slowly. "What program did you come from?" "Classified," she said quietly. "I cannot tell you more. I am sorry." "Your career," Reyes said from the right seat. Very quietly. "By telling us you exist, by doing this, you have exposed yourself." Yuna nodded. "I know. Was it worth it?" She thought about Isabel Silva, 8 years old, pressed against her mother. The old couple on their anniversary trip. The football player. The food blogger. The students. Santos and Reyes. "Yes," she said. It was worth it. Outside the plane, the passengers were sitting on the grass near the runway. Some were crying. Some were hugging strangers. Some were just sitting and staring at the sky. They were all alive. And they all knew why. Ana Silva was sitting with her daughter Isabel. Isabel was 8 years old. She had stopped crying now. She was just holding her mother's hand very tightly. "Mama," Isabel said. "Who was that lady?" "The one who talked on the speaker." Ana wiped her eyes. "Her name is Yuna Park. She is a pilot. She saved us." "Yes. She saved all of us." Isabel thought about this for a moment. "I want to see her." When the passengers moved to the terminal, word spread fast. The quiet girl from seat 12C was coming out of the plane. People stopped talking. They turned to look. Yuna walked out of the plane door. She still wore the same gray cardigan. The same old jeans. The same white sneakers. She looked exactly the same as when she had boarded in Brazil. Small. Quiet. Head slightly down. But everybody saw her now. Someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. In 10 seconds the whole terminal was clapping and cheering. People were standing up. Some were crying again. Some were shouting her name. Una. Una. Una stopped walking. She looked up at the crowd. She looked completely surprised. Like she had not expected this at all. Like she had forgotten that 267 people had just watched her save their lives. Her eyes filled with tears. Anna pushed through the crowd with Isabel. She reached Una and stopped in front of her. She did not say anything at first. She just pulled Una into a hug. A very tight hug. The hug of a mother who almost lost everything. "Thank you," Anna whispered. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Una hugged her back. She was shaking. Then Isabel tugged on Una's cardigan. Una looked down at the small girl. "Are you really a pilot?" Isabel asked. "Yes," Una said quietly. "But you look like a student." Una almost smiled. "I know. Do you have a plane?" "I did. A fighter jet." Isabel's eyes went wide. "A fighter jet? Like in the movies?" "Yes. Like in the movies." Isabel stared at her for a long moment. Then she said something that Una would remember for the rest of her life. "I want to be a pilot too. Like you. A quiet one who saves people." Una looked at this 8-year-old girl. At her serious eyes. At her small hand still holding her mother's hand. She knelt down so she was at Isabel's level. "Then study hard," Una said. "Learn everything. Practice every day. And when the moment comes, do not stay in your seat." Isabel nodded very seriously. Like she understood completely. Una stood up. The crowd was still clapping. She looked out at all these faces, all these people who had been strangers 2 hours ago and were now connected to her forever by 17 minutes over the Caribbean Sea. She nodded once. Quietly. The way Phantom always did. Then the Colombian officials came to take her away for questioning. She walked with her head up. The Colombian military and airport officials arrived in 30 minutes. The small emergency services on San Andres Island were completely overwhelmed. They called for help from bigger cities. Passengers were taken off the plane by emergency slides. Medical teams checked everyone. Amazingly, the only injuries were from the panic, some bruises, one sprained wrist. No one was seriously hurt. Una stayed with the flight crew. Officials asked her questions. She answered with as little information as possible. "How did you know the landing procedure?" "Military training." "Which country?" "Which branch?" "South Korean Air Force." "What program?" "Classified." "I cannot discuss it." "Why was a Korean military pilot on a civilian flight?" "I was on personal leave. Visiting family." 2 hours after landing, a man in a dark suit arrived. He showed his ID to the officials. He asked for a private room. Colonel Kim. South Korean military officer. From the South Korean embassy. He had flown from the capital city the moment the news reached the embassy. The private room was a small airport office. Una sat across from him. He was 51 years old. Gray hair at the sides. Careful eyes. Someone who had spent his career keeping secrets. Lieutenant Park. He spoke in Korean. Low and precise. "You understand what you have done?" "Yes, sir. Your record, your program, your training, 3 different governments are now asking questions. Colombia wants to know who you are. Brazil wants to know why you were on their airline. And America is very interested in how their classified training program ended up in a news story. I understand, sir. Your career in secret operations is finished. You cannot go back into the field. You are too well known now. Yes, sir. I know. He looked at her for a long moment. Was it the right decision? Yuna thought carefully. Not just whether saving 267 lives was worth her career, that was obvious. But whether she would make the same choice again. Yes, sir. Why? Because I had a skill no one else on that plane had. And people were going to die without that skill being used. The question was never really about my career. It was about whether I could live with myself if I stayed in my seat. Colonel Kim nodded slowly. South Korea will release a statement. It will say you are military. It will say what you did. It will say nothing about secret programs or missions. I expected that. You will receive a medal. The kind that goes into a locked vault. Yuna almost smiled. Like all my other medals. Within 6 hours, the story was on every news channel in the world. Mystery Korean pilot saves 267 lives in Caribbean miracle landing. Unknown pilot guides powerless 787 to safe island landing. Who is Yuna Park? The young woman who landed the impossible flight. The details were incomplete. South Korea's statement confirmed she was military. It confirmed the emergency landing. It praised her actions. It said nothing about her real record. Nothing about her secret missions. Nothing about her classified training. Her age was correct. Her call sign was never mentioned. Photos came from passengers on the flight. Blurry pictures taken during the chaos. Yuna in her gray cardigan. Yuna being led away by officials. Yuna sitting in the terminal. Empty eyes. Still somewhere else in her mind. The LATAM Airlines CEO flew to San Andres himself. He met Yuna in the same small office. I do not know how to thank you, he said. There are no words for what you did today. Yuna looked at her coffee cup. I did what anyone with my training would have done. No one else on that flight had your training. No. But I do not deserve credit just for that. I was trained. I had the skills. The situation needed them. I used them. She looked up at him. The real story is your pilots. Captain Santos had the courage to trust someone he had every reason not to trust. Without that trust, my training meant nothing. Santos, interviewed by investigators the next day, said, she knew things I did not know. She calculated approach profiles in her head that I would need a computer for. She flew us down a glide path I would not have believed was possible before she proved it. The investigator asked if he would fly with her again. Santos said, I would trust her with my life. I already did. So would every person on that aircraft. 2 weeks later. Seoul, South Korea. Yuna sat across from a general she had never met. He was in his 60s. His face was the face of someone who had made hard decisions for a very long time. The office was plain. Just one framed photo of Korean Air Force jets on the wall. Lieutenant Park. He looked at her real file. Your record is exceptional. In other circumstances, you would be looking at a command role within 5 years. Yes, sir. In these circumstances, your career in field operations is over. You are the most well-known classified pilot in Korean Air Force history. You cannot go back into secret missions. I understand, sir. What do you want to do? Yuna had been thinking about this question for 2 weeks. Through all the interviews. Through the hotel room in San Andres. Through the flight back to Seoul. Through the long debriefings. Through the nights when she still woke up at 3 a.m. with her heart pounding. She thought about the moment in the cockpit when her training just took over. When her mind clicked into the right mode without her forcing it. When she could see the landing in her mind before she even finished calculating. She thought about how she had learned that. She thought about her instructors at Edwards, patient people who had given their careers to teaching other pilots to do the impossible. She thought about 20 young cadets she had never met. Future pilots who would face emergencies she could not predict. I want to teach, she said. Train the next generation. Emergency procedures. Landing with no engines. Everything I know. Flight instructor at the academy? Yes. If I cannot fly secret missions anymore, I can make sure the pilots who do are better trained than I was. She paused. I got lucky twice before San Andres. The training helped, but luck played a role too. I want to reduce how much luck the next pilot needs. The general looked at her. Done, he said. Air Force Academy. Flight instruction. Start in 4 weeks. 6 months after the San Andres landing. Republic of Korea Air Force Academy. Cheongju City. Early morning. Cold and clear. Snow-capped mountains in the distance. The flight line smelled like jet fuel and cold metal. 20 cadet pilots stood in a line. All young. All nervous. All very aware that they were about to meet someone whose story they had heard many times. Yuna walked out to meet them. She wore her flight suit for the first time since San Andres. The first time in front of other people. She felt different in it. Not heavier or lighter. Just different. Like putting on a part of herself she had almost forgotten. She stopped in front of the group. 20 young faces looked back at her. Some were trying to hide how impressed they were. Some were failing at it. My name is Lieutenant Yuna Park, she said. My call sign is Phantom. I am your flight instructor for emergency procedures. Today we will talk about what to do when every system fails and the textbook has no answers. A hand went up. A cadet in the second row. Young face. Eager. Lieutenant Park, is it true you landed a 787 with no engines? Yes. Is it true you calculated the whole approach in your head? Yes. How? The cadet seemed genuinely confused, not disrespectful. How do you stay calm enough when everything is going wrong? Yuna thought about Seat 12C. The paperback book. The white knuckles. The shaking hand she had carried for 3 days before any of it happened. She thought about the moment she stood up in the aisle and walked toward the cockpit. Not because she was not afraid. Because she was afraid, and she walked anyway. I did not stay calm, she said. I want to be very clear about that. I was terrified. Before the engines even failed, I was already having one of the worst weeks of my life. My hands were shaking. I had not fully recovered from a previous mission. I was not in good shape. She paused. But I had trained for that situation. Not that exact situation. Not a 787 with 2 dead engines over the Caribbean. But the principles underneath it. The math. The physics. The emergency mindset. I had done that work for years before I ever needed it. And when the moment came, the training was there, even when my courage was not. Silence. The lesson I want you to take from my story, Yuna continued, is not that I am special. The lesson is that training works. Preparation works. Every hour you spend studying plane characteristics, calculating glide paths, running emergency scenarios in your head, that time is not wasted. It will be there when you need it, even if you do not feel ready. She looked along the line of faces. I was a quiet girl sitting in a middle seat in economy class. Nobody on that plane thought I could help. I almost did not think I could help. But I had knowledge. I had skills. I had training. And that was enough. She paused. Another hand went up. A young woman in the front row. Small. Dark eyes. The careful posture of someone used to being overlooked. Lieutenant Park, she said. Did you ever think about not going to the cockpit? Did you think about just staying in your seat? The question sat in the cold morning air and did not move. Yuna looked at this cadet, really looked at her. Something in the girl's face was asking more than the words. She was not just asking about San Andres. She was asking about every moment in every room where someone with ability chose to stay quiet. To stay invisible. To let the world decide they were not needed. Yes, Yuna said. I thought about it. The cadet blinked. She had not expected that answer. For about 4 seconds, Yuna continued. I thought, this is not my plane. This is not my flight. I am on leave. I am broken. My hands are already shaking. Who am I to walk into that cockpit and tell a captain with 29 years of experience that I know something he does not? She paused. Those 4 seconds were the most honest 4 seconds of my life. Every fear I have ever had spoke to me in those 4 seconds. The flight line was very quiet. And then I thought about the 8-year-old girl 3 rows in front of me, Yuna said. And I thought, if I have a skill, and someone needs that skill, and I stay in my seat anyway, what is that skill worth? What am I worth, if I only use what I know when it is comfortable and safe and already recognized? She looked at the cadet directly. Staying in my seat would have been easier. No one would have blamed me. No one would have even known I had the ability to help. I could have died in that Caribbean Sea with my career perfectly safe and my secrets perfectly kept. She let the word died sit in the air. The hardest thing about that walk to the cockpit was not the technical challenge. It was believing I had the right to try. That I was allowed to stand up. That a small, quiet girl from a program that officially does not exist had the right to put up her hand and say, I can do this. She shook her head slightly. That was the real battle. Not the glide path. Not the calculations. Not the landing. The battle was in the aisle. In the first 3 steps. In the decision to be seen. The young woman in the front row was very still. You will all face that moment, Yuna said, looking at all 20 of them. Not in a powerless plane. But in a meeting room. In a simulator. In a mission planning session. In a moment where the answer is in your head and the room is waiting for someone else to speak. The question is whether you will have practiced being brave in small moments, so that when the big moment comes, it is not completely new to you. She stood a little straighter. That is also what we are doing here. Not just emergency procedures. Not just glide ratios and engine restart checklists. We are practicing the habit of acting on what we know. You do not have to be the loudest person in the room to be the most capable. You do not need to be noticed or recognized in advance to do something important. You just need to be ready. She looked at her cadets now, her responsibility. So let us get ready. The morning was cold and clear. The mountains in the distance were white with snow. On the flight line, the jets waited in silence. Lieutenant Yuna Park, call sign Phantom, still invisible to those who wanted to harm her, still there for those who needed her, turned to face the future she was going to help build. Let us begin. The cadets followed her to the first jet on the flight line. As they walked, the young woman from the front row came up beside Yuna. She walked quietly. Like she was still thinking about everything Yuna had said. Lieutenant Park, she said softly. Can I ask one more thing? Yes. After San Andres. After everything. Are you okay? Yuna looked at her. Nobody had asked her that. Not the generals. Not the investigators. Not the journalists. Not even Colonel Kim. They all asked what happened. How it happened. What she knew. What she had exposed. Nobody asked if she was okay. She thought about the nightmares that still came sometimes at night. She thought about the shaking hands. She thought about sitting in seat 12C gripping a book so hard her knuckles went white. She thought about 17 minutes with 4 MiG-29s behind her over the dark ocean. Then she thought about Isabel. 8 years old. Serious eyes. I want to be a pilot too. A quiet one who saves people. I am getting better, Yuna said honestly. Some days are hard. Some days are good. But I am here. I am teaching. I am useful. She paused. That helps a lot. The young cadet nodded slowly. They reached the first jet on the line. Yuna put her hand on the cold metal of the wing. She had not touched a jet in 6 months. It felt like coming home. She looked back at her 20 cadets standing in a line. 20 young faces. 20 futures she was going to help shape. 20 reasons to keep going. She thought, this is enough. This is more than enough. Phantom was still flying. Just in a different way now. All right, she said quietly. Let us get to work.